Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I would like to talk about and suggest one feature that I personally think should be added to Helldivers 2. This feature is mostly made to fix the issue of most primary weapons having less than AP3 and simply not being picked by the players because they are just too impractical to make work against most enemies, especially on higher difficulties. The suggestion I'm talking about is enemy armor losing effectiveness over time as it gets shot. If we look at armor from a realistic perspective, shooting at roughly the same spot against a thick piece of armor will lead to your projectiles bouncing off. For example, if the caliber of the ammo is low, like 9mm. However, if you shoot several 9mm rounds at the same spot, eventually the armor would weaken and therefore the projectiles will manage to go through. Now, even though we do have bullet calibers in-game, our system works with armor penetration values. For example, a weapon with armor penetration 2 cannot penetrate a value of armor of 3, and so on. Now, we have an interesting mechanic where a weapon with armor piercing 3 shooting a value armor of 3 will penetrate but only deal 65% of the total damage. Please note that this feature is quote-unquote already somewhat implemented in the game, where if I shoot to a charger's leg, for example, with a heavy machine gun, the armor will eventually strip away, exposing the soft flesh. If I would try to shoot to a charger with a weapon that has armor penetration 1, however, my shots will always bounce off as they are too weak to even scratch it. I suggest to rework the armor penetration system to something like this. Make so an armor penetration value could weaken armor and damage it up to 2 values above it. So for example, if I have a stalwart with the armor penetration 1, I can shoot to the frontal armor of a hive guard, which is armor value 3. My bullets will bounce off initially, but if I manage to shoot the same spot repeatedly, the armor will weaken down to armor value 2, and I could now start dealing 50% less damage, damaging the hive guard. If the target survives long enough, the armor will then eventually weaken down to value 1, and I will now be dealing only 25% less damage. I will explain how this damage reduction works soon. Note: having to shoot at the exact same pixel spot might be a little too much, so I suggest to add some forgiveness system to it by increasing the area affected for the game's balance sake and player enjoyability. So, each layer of armor will reduce the damage by 25% up to a maximum of 50% based on the penetration of my weapon. So an armor value of 3 equals to 3 layers. And trust me, I know math sucks, but please follow me. If I have armor piercing 1 and I'm shooting to armor value 3, the armor will take a while to weaken, but eventually I will be able to penetrate and deal 50% of the total damage. If I have armor penetration 2 instead, shooting to armor value 3, the armor weakens faster, always by shooting at the same spot, and I will eventually deal 75% of the total damage. Please note, the damage penalty is based on my armor penetration value and the armor value I was shooting at originally. So for example, even if I manage to bring the hive guard's armor down to value 2, and even value 1 eventually, I will deal first 50% less damage and later 25% less damage, due to the 2 layers of difference the armor has compared to my initial penetration. This should not really impact the game that much, since I believe AP1 is used by barely anything and most weapons have at least AP2 by default. Now moving on, I'm suggesting to rework the damage when the armor penetration is of the same value or above of the value of the armor I'm shooting at. So for example, if I have armor piercing 3 shooting at armor value 3, the shots penetrate the armor and will deal 100% of their damage. If instead I have armor piercing 4 shooting at armor value 3, the shots will penetrate above and beyond and deal 100% plus another 100% bonus damage for a total of 200%. This will be the red hit marker, which means you know, critical hit, critical injury, you know. Basically what enemies get on us at all times. No, that's not funny. Now, a small side note, weapons that don't shoot solid projectiles, like laser weapons and plasma weapons, should instead melt the armor by firing at the same spot, dealing significantly increased fire dot damage or explosive damage to the target after the armor was weakened, but still retaining the damage penalty on direct hit based on armor value, just like I said before. And so on, this should apply to all armor penetration values and armor values in the game. This not only would make primaries and even secondaries with less than AP3 usable instead of useless against most enemies, but would also help with improving weapon variety and loadout choice variety. Thank you for watching and see you to the next one.